The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alabama just continues to roll on. They get the commitment from Edwards, and it was never in doubt. I mean, Jimmy, it just wasn't an issue. I mean, after the announcement, it was basically put out there that, hey, he committed when he visited back the weekend of June 6th, and you know, it should have been a tip that he didn't visit anywhere else. And in fact, what was kind of weird, the team that finished second is Oregon, a team he never even visited.
He never even went out there. Yeah, he canceled his visits after Alabama, which is always, you know, it's not so much inside info. I know everybody wants the scoop from inside, but so much of the time when it comes down to figuring out this stuff is track the visits. The visits mean so much. And when it was thought that Alabama was probably the favorite, and then he goes on the Alabama visit and he cancels all the others, that's sort of like all you really need to know about that situation. He obviously loved Alabama. Alabama loved him. And then Jet Washington ends up somewhere else, which is again all you need to know. I go this far with Jariah Edwards is of all of Alabama's 5 stars. There's now 5 of them in this class, which is an amazing number. 5 stars. I think Edwards is the best. Not all 5 stars are created equal. If I had to pick one of the 5 to bet on in terms of a guy that I feel will live up to that 5th star, it's Edwards for me. I think he's the best player in this class so far. And not to take anything away from C.D. Morgan and Xavier Griffin and Edmonds and Crowell. But I think Jariah Edwards is the best of all the 5 stars.
I'm right there with you. I believe that to be the case too. Sadarian Morgan for me is right there. I mean, literally like right there. But Jariah is probably the most ready to contribute. Like if he had to contribute this year, I think he could play this year. I think Sadarian is the kind of guy who might need just a little polishing. I mean, not a lot, but a little. And Crowell, again, we've got to remember, if he were here this year, it would be his junior year. So it's not going to shock me if he doesn't come in and just light the world on fire immediately. He might.
It's fair to doubt reclass. He's a reclass. I'm kind of critical of the reclass. I think too many kids reclassify. I think it's fair to say, well, he's skipping a year of critical development. This is a developmental sport. So I think it's fair to have a question about that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take him or he shouldn't be ranked where he's ranked. It's just fair to question that. Xavier Griffin, it's not so much a question, but with Xavier Griffin, it's like, okay, is he going to be an edge guy or is he going to be inside? Or what you don't hope is that he ends up being some sort of a tweener, that there's not a perfect spot. You know, it's guys that sometimes project at 2 spots. You're like, well, wouldn't you kind of prefer if he was completely obviously one guy or another? Edmonds, you know, at corner, he's fantastic. We've just seen 5-star DBs not be great. I mean, I think that's one position where there has been some 5-star bust.
That's fair. I mean, even Surtain had some troubles initially. Not a lot, but he had some. And then I think Edwards is going to play a position where his mistakes probably won't show up as much either, but his big plays will be huge. You know, a lot of times you pick on cornerbacks if they bust something. You don't kill safeties as much, it feels like. I don't know why that is, but at the same time, I mean, cornerbacks get more love than safeties generally too, so I guess that sort of comes with the territory. But
isn't it true that in the same class as Surtain was 5-star Josh Jobe, who was a good player, even played some pro football, but I don't know that Josh Jobe ever proved that he's certainly not in Surtain's class of player.
I got to go back and look and see if Jobe was a
five.
I don't remember him.
You don't remember him being a 5?
Uh-uh.
I could be wrong.
So, regardless, a couple of things. Who the more I've thought about this and watched some of Jeriah Edwards' film, the more the comparison to me is Landon Collins.
Oh, I like it.
And I think that's where I'm going with this. And I would love to have another Landon Collins, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that it just never dawned on me, and again, call me an idiot if you already knew this and were thinking this had something to do with it. But he's got 2 dudes already on the team in Cam Howard and Nakai Green-Hill, who came from that same high school. It just didn't register with me for whatever reason, because, again, I didn't get to follow those 2 young men as freshmen, because
Right.
we weren't recruited. We got those in the transfer portal. So when they come to me in the transfer portal, I typically don't even think about their high school anymore because I wasn't tracking it. So I think that's interesting, because that was one thing that a lot of Auburn people were sort of holding up, like, hey, we have a lot of St. Francis guys here. Maybe that'll help us. And they also have another St. Francis dude committed on their current commit list. And they thought that would help them. Well, we got 2 St. Francis dudes on our team already.
It's a powerhouse program.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, they just, that's not a pipeline necessarily Tuscaloosa, although Alabama's gotten a lot of guys from there. But St. Francis just annually produces dudes. I mean, it's got to be one of the most high producers of the 4 and 5 star talent on the East Coast.
By the way, I like this comment here. It says, finally, the emergency pod. We've been waiting on this one. And his avatar is an elephant holding a missile. I sort of dig that. I mean, I wonder where you get that.
That's a scary elephant.
I said it's a
You don't see too many missile firing elephants.
No, they're very rare. There's 2 left. They're at the San Diego Zoo, and they can't get them to reproduce. But so talk more about Jeriah Edwards and what you think this means, and we'll wrap that up, and then I want to talk about a player's father I met yesterday, randomly, and then I want to talk about what's next for Alabama in the next segment.
Well, with Edwards, in terms of what you're getting with Edwards, I like Luke's Landon Collins in the sense that Edwards is at his absolute best in the box. And that's where Collins did his best work. I mean, was in the box as a physical presence, as a great tackler, as a guy that kind of closed off the short middle, a guy that would fly up and run defense, but a guy that also had some big-time speed on the back end, where I was completely sold watching Edwards' film to lead me to the point where I say Edwards is the best of these 5 stars, is this. He's awesome in the box. And I think to myself watching the tape, I'm still not 100% sure about the coverage. But when they show him in coverage on his huddle tape, he's playing nickel corner. He's not even doing the deep center field thing. He's playing man nickel corner coverage on his huddle tape a lot. And I'm like, oh, man, if he's that good in the box and then has some cornerback in the toolbox, this kid is something. And,
okay.
And then you watch the physical, then you watch just the tape of him running around. And he's like, this kid's some kind of freak.
Check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment. It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay.
Syracuse football getting Calvin Russell is the biggest recruiting win over the past 20 plus years, and maybe ever.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Calvin Russell committed to Syracuse football last night, a 5-star wide receiver, 6'5", 190 pounds. How did you feel? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below, because to me, it's surreal. I'm going to date myself. So I was born April 5th, 2002. So I'm only 23 years old. I'm a young guy. Can't hide that. Can't change that. Actually, one day it will change. I will no longer be young one day. But I'm young for now. This is the best or highest ranked Syracuse football recruit of my lifetime. I'm not joking. If you go on 24/7 Sports and you check out the all-time best Syracuse football commits, you have to go back to 2001 to find a higher ranked commit than Calvin Russell last night. And that's Johnny Morant. I believe that's in the class of 2001. So that's a year before I was born. Let that sink in for a moment. That is how long it has been. This is a program. Look, there's a reason why a lot of us may be feeling the same way. If you're an outsider checking out this podcast, maybe you are a Michigan fan that lost out to Calvin Russell last night. Maybe now you have a better idea of why myself and maybe a lot of other Syracuse fans are reacting this way. Because this has not happened in over 20 years. For a lot of other programs, every year they'll get a 5-star commit. This does not happen with Syracuse. This is not normal. It is an unbelievable feeling, and you can't help but feel optimistic. You can't. You kind of have to be optimistic about this and think about the future of Syracuse football. I want to talk about why Calvin Russell picked Syracuse without going too in-depth, honestly, on the quotes, because I can summarize it with one name. He committed to Syracuse because of Fran Brown. This has been a commitment that we have been eyeing for a very long time. Actually, around this time last year, we started talking about him briefly on the podcast. Hey, Calvin Russell, Syracuse is standing out early in his recruitment. Naturally, we talked about it here on this podcast. I didn't think much was going to come of it. I thought it was an example of how head coach Fran Brown is starting to turn the tide. But this is a 5-star wide receiver. This is a top 5 overall wide receiver in the country. This is someone on 24/7 Sports that's rated 21st overall. You're telling me he's going to pick Syracuse football over any school he wants in the country? He can go anywhere. Think about his top 4. Obviously, Syracuse won. Who came in second? University of Michigan. What did the University of Michigan do a couple years ago? That's right. They won the national championship. What have they done over the past few seasons? Beat Ohio State. Oh, by the way, that team won the national title last year. How about Oregon? Oregon, the school that stole Messiah Hampton, our prodigal son, from us. How about Florida State? I know they had a bad year last year. Do you know what they did the year before? They went undefeated and probably should have been in the college football playoff. That was the top 4. But it goes beyond that. He could have chosen his hometown team, the Miami Hurricanes. They get big recruits all the time. They're historically one of the better college football programs ever. Could have gone University of Florida. Had an offer from Alabama. Could have joined Bill Belichick and played for him at North Carolina. He chose Syracuse. And again, this has been a year in the making. How did this all come to be? It was about a year ago. And there was an article from 24/7 Sports about how Syracuse was one of the early contenders, early front runners for one of the best players in the country, a wide receiver from South Florida, Calvin Russell. And like I said, I mentioned all the schools that were in on him, did not think much was going to come of it. But Syracuse is in a new age, maybe. They could be. Comment in the comments section below. Have they awoken? Has the sleeping giant awoken? Comment in the comments section below here. And throughout the past year or so, there's been a lot of schools that have come in and out of Calvin Russell's recruitment. Actually, for a while, it seemed to be a two-horse race. And Syracuse was one of those schools. It was between Syracuse and his hometown team, the Miami Hurricanes. In fact, Calvin Russell was in the JMA Wireless Dome when Syracuse beat Miami at the end of the regular season. And over the course of 13 months, Calvin Russell unofficially visited Syracuse 4 times. So this has been something that has been building over the past year plus. Syracuse was in on him very early on in his recruitment, and they stayed with him. And it's one thing to show early interest in the player, but you also need to make sure that that player is showing interest in you. Because this is a marriage here. This is not, hey, you're coming to Syracuse and you're not going to have a choice. No. He's got to also want you. Why did he want Syracuse? Why did he always keep Syracuse at the forefront or the back of his mind? Well, I'm going to pull up a quote from last night and what he said. This is from Calvin Russell, and I'm going to put it up on screen right now, but I will still read it out to you all who are listening this on Apple or Spotify, any free platform that you get your podcasts. Here it is, okay? I'm not going to lie. I made my decision a couple of days ago, Russell said. Michigan came close, but Coach Fran, the individual he is, how he was raised, I feel it. How he carries himself. The men I was raised around are similar to him. That's why I want to be there. Russell confirmed that he has officially shut down his recruitment and fully intends to sign with Syracuse on National Signing Day. Quote, "It's over. I'm done. There will be nothing else going on with my recruitment. I'm done." I guess we'll get to that stage later on here in the podcast, talking about how we still have a lot of time between now and signing day and how technically my bet with Locked On Portal podcast host Calvin Russell, Brian Smith, is still on hold about the steak dinner because technically the bet was about him signing with Syracuse, not a verbal commitment, because verbal commitments can happen anytime. So that's why we made the bet that he has to sign on signing day, by the way. But that's the point. The point of the quote was Fran Brown. Now, it doesn't mean that this was a lock. In fact, I really didn't think they were going to get him. I'll be honest with you. I try to be optimistic. I did not think that Syracuse was going to get him because until Syracuse actually showed they could get a guy like him, I really wasn't going to believe it. Again, it had not happened since 2001. Why am I supposed to believe that this is going to be any different? Well, Fran Brown. That's why. The head coach of Syracuse football, who in his first season, we talked about on the podcast, quite literally might have had the greatest first season in Syracuse football history by a head coach. Quite literally. He goes 9-3 in the regular season, wins a bowl game, and goes 10-3. Not many other coaches in the history of Syracuse have won 10 games in their first season. And he's one of the best recruiters in the nation. But over the course of 13 months, he gets Calvin Russell unofficially on campus 4 times. He also gets him on campus, this is included, for the Syracuse spring game. When that happened, that was probably the most optimistic I felt throughout this whole process that Syracuse might have had a chance at getting Calvin Russell, because he could have gone to a lot of other spring games. But he chose to go to Syracuse's spring game. And it seemed like this was maybe going to happen. And then the official visits. start coming in. And Calvin Russell does not take an official visit to Syracuse football. Now, for those that don't understand the difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit, an unofficial visit is you're going up to Syracuse or you're going up to any other school and you're paying for it. That's what it is. An official visit, the school is paying you to come. They're paying you. They're taking care of everything. Food, amenities, whatever it is, that's the difference. So Calvin Russell not coming on campus for an official visit. I know we had on Mike McAllister, 24/7 Sports Syracuse Insider, on the podcast, and he said it might not necessarily be the worst thing in the world because he's been on campus so much. I still took it as a bad sign because I'm looking at the list right now on 24/7 Sports as where Calvin Russell actually looked or where he went on official visits here. He visited University of Florida on May 16th, LSU on May 30th, Oregon on June 6th, Miami on June 13th, Florida State on June 15th, and Michigan on June 20th. No mention of Syracuse to an official visit. Didn't look good. I'll be honest with you. A few weeks ago, there was a prediction that was logged in by On3 Steven Wagner that said that LSU was going to probably get him. And it was followed up by a tweet from Brian Smith saying, don't be surprised if he chooses LSU. This is around the time that it seemed like Miami was falling out of the race, which they did. His hometown team just, I don't know what happened, but he fell out of the race. Then Michigan happens. And that was, I think, the pick by a lot of people. It was the safe pick. He goes to Michigan. He's another 5-star player that they get. They seem to get one pretty much every year. If I'm mistaken, maybe every couple of years, whatever it is. I don't follow Michigan recruiting too far in depth, but what I do know is that if you win a national championship, that means you're getting elite players out of high school. And Michigan's attractive. I'm not going to lie. I don't think any Syracuse fan would lie and tell you that Michigan isn't one of the best programs you can go to as a 5-star player. You're a wide receiver. You got Bryce Underwood, the number 1 player in the country that's going to be there. Oh, and you want to play basketball too? We can also talk about that in other podcasts because Calvin Russell's also a basketball player. He will be playing for Syracuse basketball. You can play for Michigan basketball. You can play for Dusty May, who just had a great first season over at Michigan. It seemed like I didn't want to get my hopes up last night. I really didn't. Because I did not think that this was really going. Is he really going to pick Syracuse? Or are we going to have to do a podcast all together saying, hey, I know they didn't get him, but they did all the right things. They got in on him early. And sometimes you just can't control it. And you have to give props to Fran Brown for having Syracuse in the final 2. Because that also has not happened, I think, for quite a while, where Syracuse actually has a legitimate chance in the final 2 to get a 5-star wide receiver. But guess what? We don't have to live in that world because Calvin Russell verbally committed to Syracuse football last night. And it has been a year process in the making. I am overjoyed. I am thrilled.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and even regular season games, you know, the dog days of summer in baseball, can feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Iowa basketball is back in a big-time way after Iowa gets 4-star Trey Thompson over Purdue. UConn, and Kansas.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Talking a little basketball is Iowa, and Ben McCollum does it kind of out of nowhere. Trey Thompson, a 4-star in the class of 2026, is reclassifying. We'll talk about that. Before we get into all of that, though, back from vacation. Thanks for last week being with me a couple of different times, but we are now all systems go as we are here in July, flipping the calendar over after the 4th of July holiday. We got so much to get ready for. I will be in Las Vegas for Big Ten Football Media Days. I will have daily podcasts for you each and every day from Las Vegas, bringing you everything that is happening over there, not only with the Hawkeyes, but also everything happening in the Big Ten. Looking forward to that. We start to ramp up our coverage here on Locked On Hawkeyes, going back to the daily podcast level, and we got so much to get into. Basketball is hitting it hard. Football. There's some baseball news out there as well. Just so many different things, and it's a great time for you to be aboard. I also hit my anniversary here on Locked On, 3 years, and thanks to everybody that has been with me, stayed with me throughout these 3 years. It's been an incredible run, and love doing this for you each and every day. So let's get into it, and a little longer open than what we normally have there, but I'm so excited about the news about Trey Thompson. And I find it interesting because, you listen to the interviews that I had with some of the beat guys the last couple of weeks, going back to that open availability that the press crew got a couple of weeks ago with Ben McCollum's squad. And we talked about the defensive intensity, some guys that popped in that, a couple of different things that came out of it. But I didn't know if I was reading too much into it or if this was Ben McCollum maybe leaving us a little bit of a nugget. But I brought up the fact that he mentioned reclassifying. He was talking about guys that are available. Of course, there's still some guys in the portal. You're looking there. Most of the guys are pretty well picked over at this point. Talked about European guys from overseas and the like, and the possibility of bringing somebody like that. And he also brought up somebody reclassifying. So I just asked, was it a throwaway line, or was that just a little crumb that Ben McCollum was maybe leading for us? So that's going to lead to me, of course, wild speculation all the time, because that's what we do, right? We talk, we speculate, and we converse about the Hawkeyes. And that's where my mind went. Was there somebody out there? And it leads back to Trey Thompson. So Trey Thompson's a guy, 4-star player, top 60 player in the class of 2026. So for the last couple of years, most people in the recruiting industry believed he was going to be a Boilermaker. Matt Painter loved him. Absolutely perfect skill set for what they do. Tough, tenacious, hard-nosed, a little bit undersized, but at the power forward position, a guy that really could play well in the Matt Painter system. And that's kind of where it felt like it was. Tennessee was involved. Alabama was involved. Kansas, UConn were coming calling. I mean, when those kind of programs are involved, we're talking about different waters than really what I was swam in for a very long time. Cooper Koch had some nice offers. There's been some other guys that have been at that, but it's very rare that I was been able to do this. And I think it worked more than anything is the reclassification, because Kaufman-Wren is back for another season at Purdue at the power forward position. They also brought in a backup for him out of the portal this year. So there weren't going to be minutes for Trey Thompson likely at Purdue this year. We know Iowa searching for that front court depth. Here is another piece that they can add to it. Now, are the expectations as a top 60 player that he's going to come in right away and he's going to be a day one starter? I don't think we can get to that level yet. First of all, he's got to finish up his coursework. He is going to be behind because he's not going to get to campus here at best for another week or two, and maybe even longer than that before everything finishes up with his coursework that he needs to finish up to graduate early from high school. So there are a lot of things out there, I think, that are going to slow down maybe his development to be able to hit the ground running right away, like some of these other guys. But that aside, it's crazy to have this happen. I mentioned the Purdue side of things, to see the frustration from some of the Purdue fans on the message boards and on social media. There was plenty of that out there. Some things that leave you scratching your head a little bit. But overall, Trey Thompson talking about his visit to Iowa City that he took a few weeks back, and hanging out with the other freshmen in this class, and Sage coming in from Oklahoma, and Trevin Urach, who we've talked about a lot, and even Peyton McCollum, hanging out with those guys. So there's a lot of good things to come out of this, and I think of a lot of excitement. Is he a guy that's going to play 15 minutes a game? I think that's maybe something you're looking for, 12, 15 minutes a game, something like that. His skill set is interesting. He's not a wow athlete. He's not a guy, I saw maybe a couple of comparisons to a guy like Aaron White. Aaron White was an elite level athlete. I mean, you just think of the leaping ability that he had. He's not that kind of athlete, but he has a skill set. He's good enough athlete, but tenacious, tough, hard-nosed.